Shalom Aleichem, everyone. So the first recording I did this morning didn't come out, so it gives me an opportunity to do a chazara on the blat, on Daf Kuf Gimel, so I'm going to do this again, and I hope everyone can enjoy the shir today. Zok the Gemara, we're at the bottom of Daf Kuf Beis Amid Beis, Boyeminei Rab Nosson Bar Oishia Mei Rab Yechanan. He asks them a question, and this is the same thing that the Gemara was discussing before regarding Mesates, which is a person that's chiseling out the stones to prepare them for building. Rav said that this is the malacha of Baina, and Shmuel says this is the malacha of Makeh Bepatish. So he asked this question from Rabbi Yechanan, Mesatis Mishumai Mechayev, chiseling out these stones, what is he chayev for? Achvile biyadei, Rabbi Yechanan showed him the motions with his hands, Mishum Makeh Bepatish. He showed him the motions like a hammer into his palm, that he's chayev for Makeh Bepatish and not for Baina, like Shmuel's opinion. But we look at the lashon of the Mishnah at the beginning of this perek here. It says, "Hamesates ve'hamakeh bepatish," the one that chisels out these stones, and then afterwards it says, "and makeh bepatish," which means that it's two different things. Mesates is not makeh bepatish. Answers the Gemara, the way you have to read the Mishnah is Hamesatis ha makeh bepatish. First, the Mishnah tells you the example of what we're speaking about, a person that is chiseling out these stones, and then the Mishnah tells you, and the Mesatis is chayiv for makeh bepatish. Toshama, bring a raya from the next case in the Mishnah regarding this argument that Rav and Shmuel had before, whether it's baina or makeh bepatish. So it said in the Mishnah, Kideach kol shehu, person that's drilling a hole, even if he only drilled a kol shehu. So Rashi here explains, it doesn't say in the Mishnah that he's making a hole. That would be noikiv, when you make a hole. Drilling is when you drill a hole to fill it with something, to fill it with a nail, to fill it with a screw. So what did it say in the Mishnah? You just drill the hole, yechayiv. Yechayiv right away. Asks the Gemara, Rav. According to Rav, you understand why it'd be chayiv right away. Mechzi keman dechor chorsel binyana. This looks like a person, what is he doing? He's drilling this hole in order to be able to build, to put in a nail there. So that itself is part of the process of the building, and therefore it's chayiv for the malacha of baina. Elo Shmuel, but according to Shmuel, that says, simply drilling a hole is not part of baina, as we saw before the argument regarding making a hole in a chicken coop. So Rav says making the hole is baina, and Shmuel said it's not. So over here as well, drilling the hole is not baina. So what is it? You'll only be chayav for makeh bepatish, for the final blow, but it's not. El l'shmuel lav gmar malachahu. Drilling the hole before you put in a screw inside, why would you be chayav for that? You haven't completed anything yet. Answers the Gemara, what are we talking about over here? The bazei beramtze de parzela, that he pierced the hole with an iron nail, and he left it inside, v'shafke begavei, and he left the nail inside, the hainu gmar malacha. So drilling the hole with this iron nail and leaving it inside, that's the completion of the malacha. It could now be used for hanging things in it. The next case, it said in the Mishnah, it said, Zeh klal, that the klal is, koloisim malacha malachtim miskayemes b'Shabbos, you do a malacha, and the malacha endures, yechayev for this malacha on Shabbos. Zok the Gemara, Zeh klal asuyimai. What is this klal coming to add? What's the chiddush of this klal? Answers the Gemara, la asuye, it comes to add the following case. Dochak ka piza bekaba. You have a big block of wood, and you could carve it out and create a cavity inside to be used as a keli, as a vessel. So it has a certain measurement of how much could be carved out in it. How much could it be carved out? A kav, the measurement of a kav. So this person carved it out on Shabbos, but instead of carving it out to its full amount of a kav, he only carved it out a kapiza, which is a smaller amount. It's 3/4 of a kav. So the Mishnah is saying, even though he didn't carve it out fully for the full amount that it could be used for, but nevertheless, he did something which is miskayemes, which endures, and it can be used as is, even the smaller amount, and therefore yechayev for that. The next thing it said in the Mishnah, a person is banging in a nail, but he bangs with his hammer on like a platform of something made from metal, and he's banging with his hammer on it and not even banging on a nail. He'd be chayiv for that also. The Mishnah says he's chayiv because it's mesakin melacha. So the question is, my kovet, what is he doing? If he's simply banging on a sheet of metal, what is he accomplishing? Rabbi and Rav Yosef Damri Tarvayu, so Rabbi and Rav Yosef both say, because he's training his hand how to do the work, how to use a hammer. Kashuba Bnei Rachba asked a question on this. Elamayata. If so, when a person is just training himself, and that alone is enough of reason to be chayev, If you're observing a person that's a professional, a carpenter that's doing his work on Shabbos, and the Gamar, and you learn from him how to do the work, so too you'd be chayav for a malacha on Shabbos, of misakin malacha, just by observing him and learning it from him. So what's the pshat over here? So therefore, Abai and Rava both say a different pshat. When they had to flatten out the plates in the Mishkan that were used to gold plate, to crush them, so they had to have very thin plates of gold. So they would bang with a hammer to flatten it out. So when they did that, Oisen came. They would do so. So as Rashi explains, this hammer they used would sometimes get a little bit broken, and they had to make sure that it was a good hammer, that it won't break this plate that they're using. It won't pierce or break this plate that they're going to be using for the crushim. So therefore, every once in a while, they had to bang with this hammer on another surface to smooth it out. So therefore, when you're smoothing out your hammer, that's also the malacha, and that's what the Mishnah was talking about over here, when you bang with your cornice, with your hammer on a sadin to smooth out your hammer. Tanya Nami Yochi, this is exactly the way it says in the Braiser. You bang with your hammer on a metal platform b'shas malacha during your malacha chayiv. You'd be chayiv as well. This is the way it was done in the Mishkan when they were preparing the gold plates for the crushim. So we begin a new Mishnah, ha-chayrish kolshu, the malacha of plowing. What is the shear of the malacha of plowing? It's a kolshu, whatever it is, even the smallest amount. Ha-menachesh, pulling out the weeds to improve the soil. It's also a ha-mekarsen, or if you have dead branches of a tree and you pull them off, you're pruning the tree for it to grow better. Va-mezared, or you have young shoots that are growing out and there are too many growing at once and you want to pull out some so it should grow better. All of these cases, you chayav kolshu, even a tiny drop, chayav. Even a kol shehu, you'd be chayiv. Hamalakit eitzim, a person that's collecting wood, im l'sakein, if he's cutting the wood from the tree in order to improve the tree, that it should grow better, kol shehin, then it's a kol shehu, as we said. Im lahesik, if he's collecting the wood from the tree, kedei levashel, to cook with it, to use it for firewood, so then it's kedei levashel beitza kala. Im lahesek, that is. Again, im lahesek, if it's for firewood, kedei levashel beitza kala, to cook a light egg, which we had before in the Gemara, and this refers to cooking a chicken egg. Malaket asavim, a person that collects grass, im lesakein, if it's to improve the soil, kolshu, even a tiny drop of grass. Im lebeheme, if you're collecting the grass to feed an animal, kimuloi piagdi, the mouthful of a goat. So the Gemara starts with the first case in the Mishnah where it spoke about chayrish, where a person is plowing, and it said in the Mishnah that even a kolshu you'd be chayav for. Asks the Gemara, lamai chazi, if it's just a kolshu, what is it worth for? What does it accomplish? And says the Gemara, chazi lebizre dekara. It could be used, that little kolshu that you plowed, you can plant over there one seed of a pumpkin. The chvasa gabi mishkan, and this was done similarly in the Mishkan. Shekein roya lekelach echad shel samanim. They needed to plant the seeds for the herbs that they used for the dye in the Mishkan, so they can plow just one place to plant one seed for the herbs that they were using, and that's a significant action that they did in the Mishkan, which is a malacha. The next thing it said in the Mishnah, menachesh, mekarsim, v'mezared, somebody that's pulling out the weeds, or he's pulling out dead branches, or he's pulling out from the young shoots that it should grow better. Tana Rabbana, we learned in Abraise, hatoilish ulshin, a person that plucks endives, v'mezared zradim, and he pulls out the young shoots that are growing. Imla chile, if he's doing it for the purpose because he's going to eat this, so then kegreigeris, the shear for eating, any malacha that's done for the purpose of eating, the shear is a kegreigeris, a dry fig size. Im lebehema, if he's using it to feed an animal, then kamlai piagdi, the size is to feed a mouthful of a goat. Im lehesik, if it's for firewood, kedei lavashel beitza kalas, we said in the Mishnah, to cook a light egg. Im leyapis esakarka, if he's doing it to improve the soil in the field, then kol shehin. Then whatever it is, even the smallest amount, improves it, and you're chayiv for that. Frag the Gemara. Let's take a look at this over here. Atu kulu loyle yapes esakarkaninu. The other cases where the person is intending it for another use, whether for firewood, whether for eating, for the animal, isn't he improving the land automatically by doing this? And therefore he should be chayiv even if it's a kolshu because the land is becoming improved and he's doing that malacha. Rabbi and Rav Yosef Damri Tarvayu. Rabbi and Rav Yosef both answered, but Agam Shonu. It's talking about a person that's doing this in a swamp that does not need to be improved. It's not being used in any way. It doesn't have to be improved at all. So that's totally insignificant. Abaye answers, we could say that this brisa is talking about a person that's doing this in a field that could use the improvement. The lavagam, it's not a swamp. The kagoin, the loikamachavin. In the earlier cases here, when the person is doing it for firewood, or he's doing it to eat, so he's not having kavanah to improve the field. If it's not what his kavanah is, that he's trying to improve the soil, so then you're not chayiv without having kavanah. This is the opinion of Rab Shimon that we had so many times, that when you do a malacha and you don't have kavanah, you're not chayiv. Fragt the Gemara, but for Abaye and Rava both said, Rab Shimon would be made in a case where even without your kavanah, the malacha is inevitable to happen. You did an action and it's going to do the malacha. Over here, when the person plucks these endives, he pulls out these from grass or whatever, or the young shoots that are growing, it's going to improve the soil of the field. So it's inevitable. Like that's the concept of sikresha. So why don't we apply that over here? Answers the Gemara, what he's doing over here is he's pulling out these things in the ground of his friend, in his friend's fields. And that's something that he couldn't care less for. As Rashi says, that's something he couldn't care less for, and therefore, even in a case of sikresha, he'll still be potter. In fact, Tosfos over here brings the aruch, this is a famous aruch that Tosfos brings a few times, that says that according to Rab Shimon, that usually says psikresha is going to be aser, but in the case of psikresha deloi nichale, he doesn't care for it, or maybe he doesn't even want it, in such a case it'll actually be totally mutter to do. So in this case where he's doing it in his friend's field and he couldn't care less for this, or he doesn't even want it, doesn't want to improve the soil, then the psikresha is not a problem. Zok the Mishnah, ha-kaisef shtei yosiyos. Moving on to the malacha of kaisef. So the minimum amount, as we learned before, is to write 2 letters. A person writes 2 letters, bein b'mina, bein b'smaila, whether with his right hand, whether with his left hand. Bein mishem echad, bein mishtei shemes. Whether he's writing twice the same letter of the aleph beis, or whether he's writing 2 different letters from the aleph beis. Bein mishtei samoniyos, whether he's writing from 2 different inks, 2 different colors, red and black. B'chol loshen, writing in any language, English letters, ABC, or Hebrew letters. Chayiv, you're going to be chayiv for writing these 2 letters. Rabbi Yosi says, the whole chiyuv over here of the malacha of kaisef for writing 2 letters was not elo mishum roishim. It's only for the fact that he's making markings. Shekach kaisef al krashei mishkan. This is exactly what they did in the Mishkan. They put markings on the krashim, laid the ezeb and zugay, to know exactly what's the pier when they dismantled the Mishkan. And then they want to put back up the Mishkan to see where that keresh was and to peer it with the place where it was before. They made markings. So the malacha that you chayiv for is for the markings, not only for writing letters. Rav Yehuda says, "Mustzinu shem katan mishem gadol." We find when a person writes a small name from a bigger name that he intended to write. Shem mishimin, a person writes only the 2 letters of Shem, even though he intended to write the full name of Shimon, or Mishmuel, he intended to write the full name of Shmuel. Noach mi Nocher, Don mi Daniel, God mi Gadil. In these cases, Rav Yehuda says, even though he intended to write the full word, but if you wrote one part of this word, which is also a full name, like Shem or Noach or Don or God, you'd be chayiv for that. So, the Gemara, going back to the first part of the Mishnah where it said, whether you write with your right hand, whether you write with your left hand, yechayev, bishloi ma'imin l'chayev, we're writing with your right hand, yechayev, because mishum de derech ksiva bekach. It's the derech of a person to write with his right hand. Ela smoil, if you're writing with your left hand, amai, why would you be chayev? Ho'ein derech ksiva bekach. It's not the derech to write with your left hand. So you're doing a malacha shalei kedarka, why would you be chayev? We had before, if a person is carrying out on Shabbos, with his right hand or his left hand, he's chayiv, because it comes to carrying, it is the derech of a person to carry with both his right or left hand. But when it comes to writing, a person only writes with one hand, the right hand, if he's a right-handed person. So why does the Mishnah say, bein b'mim, bein b'smailai? Answers the Gemara, Amar Rav Yirmiyah, be'ite yat shonu. When it says that he's writing with a left hand, we're talking about a person here that's left-handed. Fragt the Gemara, wait a minute. If this Mishnah is talking about a person that's left-handed, v'tehev ismail didei ki yamin de kula alma. If so, his left hand is the stronger hand, like everybody's right hand. If so, for the left hand you should be chayiv. Now yimin loy lechayiv, and for the right hand, writing with the right hand, you should not be chayiv. So still, how could the Mishnah say that he's chayiv for both with the left hand and the right hand? Elamar Abaye, so Abaye answers, the Mishnah is speaking about b'shteilut b'shtei yadav, an individual that writes well with both of his hands. So therefore, the Mishnah is saying in such a case is chayiv whether it's with the right hand or whether it's with the left hand. Rav Yaakov Bas Yaakov Amar, he says another pshat. Hamani Rabbi Yosi, even the Reisha of the Mishnah is also Rabbi Yosi. The Amma that Rabbi Yosi said later on in the Mishnah that Chayiv V'Shtei Yosi is Elam Shem Reishim. You're not chayiv just for writing the letters. You're chayiv just for making the markings. That itself would be chayiv for. And markings you can make with your right hand, with your left hand. You don't need your right hand for that. Frag the Gemara about Vahamid the Sefer Rabbi Yosi. If in the Sefer it's Rabbi Yosi, it says there Rabbi Amar Rabbi Yosi, Reisha Lav Rabbi Yosi. So then we know that the Reisha is not Rabbi Yosi. Answers the Gemara, no, that's not the case. Kula Rabbi Yosi here the entire Mishnah is Rabbi Yosi. Even though it begins speaking without quoting him by name, it only brings his name later, but really the entire Mishnah is Rabbi Yosi speaking. We learned next in the next part of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Matzinu. Rabbi Yehuda says you intended to write a full name of Shmuel or Shimon and you only wrote two of the letters, you'd be chayiv for that. So the Gemara is going to discuss here Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda, so now the example Rabbi Yehuda is giving is Shtei Oisius v'hein Shnei Shemus. An example of a person that wrote two different letters of the Aleph Beis. Then he would be chayiv if he intended to write Shmuel and he ended up writing Shem, which are two different letters. Then he would be chayiv. Shtei Oisius v'hein Shem echad. But if he ends up writing two letters and it's the two of the same letters, even though it makes up a full word, and Rashi here gives examples of two letters that make up a full word: sheish, teis, chach, and so on, and they come from a bigger word: sheish from sheishach, teis from titnan. So on. So you have examples where a person writes the same two letters and they come from a larger word. In such a case, it seems like Rabbi Yehuda would say, Lei mechayiv, you would not be chayiv. But Vatanya, we learned in a braisa, and here the Gemara is going to bring a long braisa, and in this braisa we will see Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that he holds even if you wrote two of the same letters from a larger word, you would be chayiv. Braisa says as follows: Va'asa achas. The Torah, when it speaks about the carbon chatas, it says, and he did one of these avedas. So, I would think that achas means you have to do the full one aveda. If you intended to write a full name, you have to have written the full name. If you intend to weave an entire garment, it's only once you weave the entire garment. If you're making a sieve, it's only if you made the entire sieve, not if you made one part of it. So therefore the Torah adds a mem to the word achas, me'achas, from this one malacha that you intended to do. Which means you don't have to do it fully. Even if only you did a part of it, you're chayiv already. Now, if so, since it says even if you only did a part of it, you're chayiv. I would think even if you only wrote just one letter, you wove only one thread. You only made one row, one part of the sieve, you would be chayiv as well. Therefore, the Torah wrote the word achas, even though it says the mem, but it says achas, meaning that it has to be a significant part of this one malacha. What's the example for this? So the Tanakama says, what's the case? That there's a smaller name that's coming from a larger name, which is Shem, Shimon, Mishmul, Noach, Minochet, Dan, Midaniel, God, Migadil. This was the example that Rabbi Yehuda said in our Mishnah, and here the Tanakama is the one that's saying this example that you learn from Me'achas, that it has to be something full, like the word Shem, but it doesn't have to be the entire name that you intended to write, like Shimon or Shmuel, and you'd be chayiv even for part of it. Now, Rabbi Yehuda argues and says, even if you only wrote two letters, even if there are two of the same letters of the Aleph Beis, chayiv, you'd also be chayiv. Sheish, teis, rar, gag, choch, and you wrote only these two letters from a larger word that you intended to write, as Rashi brings over here, all the words, the larger words that you intended to write, still you'd be chayiv. So here we see Rabbi Yehuda says, even if you write two of the same letters of the Aleph Beis from a larger word, you still would be chayiv. But the Gemara, before it returns to the stir of Rabbi Yehuda, it brings the rest of the Braisa. Rabbi Yosi says, are you chayiv for writing the letters? You're chayiv for making the markings. As it was done in the Mishkan, they made the markings on the kroshim to know what's the pier, where they put up the kroshim. Therefore, Rabbi Yossi that it says, Sarat srita achas al shnei nisarin. If you make two scratchings on two different beams of two different krushim in the Mishkan, or b'chlal, two different boards of wood, pieces of wood, oishtei sritos al neser echad, you make two markings on the same board of wood, chayiv, you'd be chayiv just for the scratches, because that is a marking like it was done in the Mishkan. Shimon Oimer, another opinion brought in the Brayser. Rab Shimon says, "V'osa achas." He brings the same drush as the Tana Kama, that it says in the Torah he did one malacha. I would think you only chayiv if you wrote the entire name you intended to write, the entire garment you intended to weave, or the entire sieve you intended to make. Talmud loima meyachas. So the Torah wrote meant to say even only part of it you would be chayiv for it. Im meyachas. Not that the Torah says only part of it. I would think only if you wrote one letter. One thread. Only one row of the sieve that you're making. I would think you'd be chayiv. Talmud loimar achas. So the Torah writes achas, that it has to be something significant, a complete thing. What does this include? What does this mean? You chayiv if you do a malacha that could endure. Okay, so but the Rabbi Shimon doesn't exactly spell out what he's talking about, but it seems to be very similar to what the Tana Kama says, and the Gemara will soon ask this question. Now the Brayser continues and quotes another thing that Rabbi Yossi said, and this is something we had already before in the Gemara a few times, that it says in the Torah, "V'asa achas," that he did one malacha, but it actually says over there in the pasuk the word meyachas meheina. Then it says heina. So we darshan the word asa to go on the word heina as well. Heina means them, plural, which means as follows: Pa'amim shechayev achas. Al kulon, sometimes you chayev one carbon chatas for all the malachas you did, upa'amim shechayev al kolachas va'achas, and sometimes you'll be chayev separately for each one of the shgagas. If each one of the malachas that you did, you'll be chayev for each one of them separately. This is the conclusion of the Brayser. So now the Gemara comes back to the contradiction of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Katani miya, either way, what did we see over here? Rabbi Yehuda oy mafil lekasav al shtei yosis vehein shem echad. That if you wrote two letters from a larger word, and even if they're from the two same letters of the Aleph Beis, you'd be chayiv. And in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda gave the example of a person that wrote Shem, Mishmuel, Noach, Minocher, that are two different letters from the Aleph Beis. Answers the Gemara, Loi Kashya. It's not a contradiction. Hadi day, our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda is stating his own opinion. Ha the Rabbi. In the Brayser, Rabbi Yehuda is repeating the opinion of his teacher. The Tanya, we learned in another Brayser, Rabbi Yehuda oimim mishum Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Gamliel, if you wrote two letters from a larger word, even if it's the same letter of the Aleph Beis, chayiv, you would be chayiv even for that. As the examples that were brought in the previous Brayser. So we clearly see over here that this he said in the name of Rabbi Gamliel. Now the Gemara comes back to explaining Rab Shimon. Shimon that was quoted in the Brayser seems to be very similar to the Tana Kama. He's using the same pasuk, the achas, and the mem of the achas. He seems to be saying something very similar to the Tana Kama. The Gemara Rab Shimon Aina Tana Kama, isn't he saying the same thing as the Tana Kama? So now the Gemara first suggests to say maybe the difference is Aleph, the A'azarcha. There's a pasuk in Nach that uses this word A'azarcha, and it begins with these two letters of Aleph. So according to the Tana Kama, this would be the difference. The Tana Kama holds Aleph, the A'azarcha loy mechayev. If you intended to write the full word of A'azarcha and you only ended up writing the two letters of Aleph, you're not going to be chayev, because the two letters of Aleph don't make up a word. So for that you won't be chayev. As the Tana Kama brings the examples, only Shem from Shimon, God Migadil, and so on, but not for Aleph. Rab Shimon Savar, Rab Shimon that says that it has to be a Dover HaMeskayim, what does Rab Shimon hold? Rab Shimon is more stringent, because Rab Shimon says, Rab Shimon Savar Kivin the Isei Begalturi Ba'alma, since these two letters of Aleph are used in all kinds of writings. It's used in amulets, as Rashi says, it could be used in other writings. It says in some places that it could be used, Aleph could be an abbreviation for Amen. So the Aleph is also something which has a kiyum, it shows something, so chayiv. That's Rab Shimon's chumrah that you would be chayiv. Frag the Gemara, so the Gemara asks on this pshat, lememre the Rab Shimon l'chumrah. Shall we say the pshat on this brayse is that in a case where a person intended to do a full malacha and he only did part, Rab Shimon is more machmer even than the Tana Kama? That can't be the case, because Vatanya, we learned in another brayse that discusses this subject, the similar subject, hakideach kol shehu, a person that drills a part of a hole that he's drilling, chayiv, the Tanakama here says you'd be chayiv. Hamegarer kolshu, if you're smoothing out a surface and you only did part of it, or hama'abed kolshuhu, and you did the same thing with tanning, you only did a kolshuhu, and atzar bekeli tzura kolshuhu. Or if you were making the forms and the shapes of a keli, designing in a keli, even a kolshu, you'd be chayiv for that, even if you didn't finish the full thing that you intended to do. Shimon Aimer. Then Rab Shimon says, no, Achi Kadech is Kuloi, if he intended to drill a hole, he's not chayiv until he completes the full malacha that he intended to do. Achi Yigre is Kuloi, until he scrapes out and smooths out the entire thing that he intended to do. Achi Abed is Kuloi, and he's not chayiv for tanning the hide of the animal until he finishes the complete malacha that he intended to do. Achi Yotzu Kuloi, until he finishes designing the full design of the keli that he intended to do. So what do we clearly see over here? Rab Shimon is the one that's more lenient. Rab Shimon says if you intended to do a malacha, you only chayav if you completed the whole thing. So we can't say that in the Braisa before, Rab Shimon is more machmer than the Tanakama and says that even if you only wrote two of the same letters, aleph, aleph, that don't even make up a regular word, that you'd be chayav for that. Ella, so therefore the Gemara reverses this. We have to say Rab Shimon was more machmer. Rab Shimon ha'as lashminan. Rab Shimon in the Braisa before is teaching us as follows. Ad sheyichtav es Hashem kuloi. Whatever name you intended to write, you won't be chayiv until you actually wrote that entire name. Fragt the Gemara, how could you say this? How could you say such a thing? But in the Braisa, it's clearly saying that Rab Shimon says, like the Tanakama, Rab Shimon oime, v'asa achas yochel ad sheyichtav es Hashem kulei tamud loime me'achas. That because it says me'achas with the added mem, so Rab Shimon is saying you even chayiv if you only wrote part of the name that you intended to write. So how could we say that Rab Shimon says that you had to have written the entire name of Shimon or Shmuel, for example, to be chayiv? Answers the Gemara Text, you have to answer and explain the words of the Braisa as follows. Ve'ema hachi. Over here, there's a person that intended to write a full pasuk, not just a full word. He intended to write a full pasuk, and I would think, since Rab Shimon, as we saw before, holds by the drilling, or the other cases that you have to do the full malacha that you intended to do. So when you intended to write a full pasuk, maybe over here I would say you only chayev if you wrote a full pasuk. The Torah says me'achas with the added mem to teach me that even if you wrote only one full word, you chayev for that one word itself. So that's the leniency of Rab Shimon over the Tanakama. That Rab Shimon holds that you only chayev when you wrote the full word but not the full pasuk. The Tanakama holds that you even chayev if you wrote Shem Mishimin and so on, which is only a smaller part of a larger word. That's the difference between the Tanakama and Rab Shimon. Now the Gemara will explain the last part of the Braisa where it brought another statement from Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi, and sometimes you chayev for once, that is, for many malachas you did, and other times you'd be chayev for every malacha separately that you did. So what's the pshat over here in this drasha of Rabbi Yossi? So the Gemara is going to explain that really there's a few drashas here. From these two words of me'achas and me'heina, there's a few drashas that we darshan. Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, my time with Rabbi Yossi. What's the pshat on what Rabbi Yossi said? Achas, the Torah could have written the word achas, that you did one malacha, and instead it writes me'achas. Heina, the Torah could have written the word heina, and instead of that it writes me'heina. Okay, so we darshan as follows. Let's start with the word achas. Achas shehi, so, and then, before we get to the actual drashas, but he first explains what else we're going to be darshaning over here, and then we darshan the combination of these two words, the fact that it says it together. So we darshan achas shehi heina, sometimes one will turn into many, and veheina shehi achas, and sometimes many will be one. And now we begin to darshan. Achas, what do we learn out from this that the Torah says that he did one malacha? Shimon. You'd be chayiv if you intended to write Shimon. You only chayiv if you wrote the whole word Shimon. Now it says me'achas, it adds a mem from what you intended to do. Shem is Shimon. From here we learn out that you chayiv even if you only wrote part of what you intended to write. Now, the word heina, when the Torah writes heina, you did from them. Who are these plural things it's referring to? Avis. There are 39 avis malachas. Then it says me'heina, what comes from these avis? Taildes. They are the branches, the taildes, the offsprings that come from the avis. Anything that's similar to the av is also asur and Shabbos. Now, we will darshan the combination of the two words, achas and heina and achas. Achas shehi heina, you do a malachem, and you end up being chayiv many times. Zodn Shabbos v'shigigas malachis. That's in a case if a person knows that it's Shabbos, but he was a shogig on the malachis. So in such a case, a person will be chayiv heina. He'll be chayiv many, many times because the shgaga was the malachis. It's a separate shogig for each malacha that he forgot. Heina shehi achas. Many that you're only chayiv one carbon chatas for that. That's shigigas Shabbos v'zodn malachis. When the person knows these malachis are awesome, but he doesn't know that it's Shabbos today, his shgaga is one shgaga that he forgot that it's Shabbos, and therefore even for many malachis, he'll be chayiv only once.